All right, how we doing? It's pretty good this morning so far, huh? Got some good insights. So the impetus of this asset protection panel came, well, obviously when you have life experiences, things like that, like having a new baby, which I had in November. I hit up the Vincent brothers, who are my estate planning attorneys, and we started doing some updating on all that kind of stuff. And then we had this big deal just like blow up. And we had a $100 million deal in Texas where we got defrauded by the property management company. And without having to go into it, it was like I was a sponsor on the loan, and the lender was like, even though it was a non-recourse loan, they're like, we're coming after you, we're coming after you. And I think it was a scare tactic more than anything, just to like, light a fire under our ass. But it worked very, very well. It was. And so we attacked this deal, and we took over property management, and we infused millions, $8-9 million is what we've infused since the February of this year, and brought in new third-party management after we took it over in-house internally, and I don't know, I guess makes your butt pucker up a little bit when stuff like that happens, and you're like, do I have all my ducks in a row? Am I protected in every way possible? And as we're all trying to grow our net worth and our personal financial statements, as that grows, we want that safety net to grow with it, right? And so, could we rebuild it? Yeah, but I don't want you to have to rebuild it because you didn't have simple things in place. So the impetus of this panel is to talk through different ideas, different strategies, and asset protection techniques and things that you can implement that are very easy to do, things that can be implemented and attacked and done within this week, right? And so I have 3 attorneys on this panel, an insurance agent, and a C-class high school student. So this is gonna be a good panel.
You want to try to make something practical that people can take home and understand and not be overly boring. So we put together these 5 things, these 5 to-dos that everybody should think about, and whether or not they check each of these 5, because it's important to do. And I think the first one I want to go through is make sure that you have a good insurance program. And I think, Drew, you should touch on this. When people ask me about asset protection and like, what the hell should I be doing? Insurance wins the day every single time. Offshore is stupid. No, it's not stupid. It's fine. If you have it, it's great. Good job. You overpaid. But it's the most effective and cost-effective way to protect your assets. So first and foremost, do you have like an umbrella policy? And Drew, can you talk a little bit about what umbrella policies are and how they work?
Yeah, so Drew, what do you do if somebody comes to you as a new client, and how do you audit what their backstops are, right? I know that's something you have to, hey, what do your backstops look like in case something gets through, something gets passed? Like, let's look at them personally and professionally. What are some of the boxes that you check to make sure that you kind of audit what their protections look like?
Yeah, so the first thing that we do when we onboard a client is we try and get a general idea of how much assets do you have and how much of that is not in a retirement account or not in your primary residence, because in most states, both of those are protected. So we're trying to figure out what liquid a plaintiff's attorney could come after you for, and then we want to match up and kind of marry a policy to cover that asset. So if you, the first thing we want to do is an auto policy, right? So everybody here probably, if you live in a town where you're driving a car, maybe if you live in Chicago you don't have a car, but everybody has an auto policy. And then we back that up with an umbrella, to your question. And that, all an umbrella policy does, it's very misunderstood. I had to explain it to Tim like 6 times what an umbrella policy
Still don't get it.
It doesn't do anything other than stack limits on top of the policies that it is an umbrella over. So if you have a homeowner's policy, you have personal liability associated with that. So if you have a party and your deck collapses and people get hurt, that policy is going to have usually between $250,000 and $1 million of coverage. Well, if you have 10 people on this deck when it collapses, you're going to blow through that million, especially if you are collectible if you have liquid collectible money. So that's why we want to say, all right, how much liquid do you have, and let's marry an umbrella policy to that.
And kind of piggybacking off that, make sure that your insurance agent performs and acquires insurance on your behalf often. So if it's someone that just does auto policies, that doesn't do real estate or doesn't understand kind of business risk and that sort of thing, it may not be the right agent for you. I get a lot of calls from folks that flip houses, and the new owner finds water in the basement. It happens when it rains sometimes. And they get sued, and they didn't know that they don't have liability coverage. So when you get sued, you have an insurance company representing you. So instead, they have to come out of pocket, spend 40 or 50K defending, maybe even if it's a bogus lawsuit, 50K doing that. So you need to have someone that you can rely on, that can help you and think for you, and that's what I think a good professional service provider can do. So that's the first one, insurance program.
Yeah,
And this,
so one that's very easy is make sure you have an umbrella liability insurance policy. If you do not have one, you need one. Drew, what are the top 1 to 3 things that are going to take somebody to zero?
Number one, a bad auto accident.
So you already have auto insurance, but it caps at usually $300,000, right?
Yeah, a lot of people have no idea what they buy. So a lot of people are sold like, no offense to State Farm, but they'll buy like, State Farm will say, here's an auto policy, it's $300 for a half a year. And nobody says, all right, well, what do I get for the $300 for a half a year? And a lot of times that is it's state minimum. So each state has minimum per person that's injured in a car accident and per accident. So like an aggregate on the policy. So a lot of people will just try to get the sale, right? And it's the easiest way to get the sale is to have the cheapest premium. So here's your minimum, your state minimum policy. Nobody if you're in this room paying money to be here, you have enough money to not buy a state minimum policy. So please ask the question of what are my limits? And if the limits are anywhere under $100,000 per person and $300,000 per accident, you are getting horrible advice. Because if you injure somebody in an accident, it's like a broken ankle. It's going to be $100,000. And then if you're collectible beyond that, the plaintiff's attorney's coming after you. So, like, first thing, most dangerous thing you can do is personally get into a car accident.
And so an umbrella policy lays on top of that car policy. So if it does go to $1 million, you got 300 grand plus another $1 million in case it goes beyond, what that initial car insurance covers. And how much is an umbrella policy? And I don't get anything, by the way, for talking about this stuff. If you guys want to do business with Drew, great. If not, no worries. But he runs all of my stuff, but it's not that expensive, right?
Yeah, it's like $200 per million is a great kind of benchmark
per
to do.
Year, per month?
Per year. $200 per $1 million of coverage per year. It's
there's no reason that everybody in here shouldn't have a couple $1 million of coverage just to be safe, right? Because here's the thing, it's not about that multiple millions of dollars of coverage, it's about the insurance company's attorneys going to fight on your behalf. These big-ass, ugly, hairy bulldog attorneys, corporate attorneys, going to fight the plaintiff's attorneys that you don't have to pay for. That's the key. You know how quickly these blood-sucking attorneys' fees start adding? No offense to these guys, right? No, but how quickly that stuff starts adding up? Substantially, very, very quickly. So that's the real benefit in this. You have other corporate attorneys battling on your defense, right, on your behalf.
Yeah, for a couple $100 a year.
What are the other? What would you say number 2 or number 3 would be?
For me, it's all liability, right? Like if your house burns down, horrible situation, but you can rebuild the house. What takes you to zero is the liability side of your balance sheet. So anything that you do where you could get sued for it, I know most of you are real estate investors, so right, you do something, you evict somebody out of your unit, and they say that they were in the shower when you came in to evict them, and you harassed me or you molested me. You're gonna get that happens, right? It happens a lot. So
not at my properties.
Who knows? So
not in the SOPs.
all that, like the big thing that I'm worried about for everybody in this room is the liability side. So any time you are doing anything, entering into a contract, make sure that you have insurance that backstops whatever you promise within that contract. Very simple, very cheap. Like the property coverage is the expensive side because it gets used a lot, right? The liability side is very inexpensive, but when the cases are all very severe. So, and you get the bulldog insurance attorney to protect you. So it's kind of a blanket answer to your question, but any liability side exposure that you have, be very cognizant of it and work to transfer that risk off of your balance sheet and onto the insurance company.
And the umbrella policy covers you when you're driving your own car, you when you're driving somebody else's car, right? Like your kids, your family, if they're driving, your kids are 16 and they drive and they get into an accident, it covers your ass too, right?
Correct.
And then there's, renting a jet ski somewhere. It takes care of all those different things.
Yep.
And it lays on top of your home insurance in case your debt collapses and like all that different stuff. So like the umbrella liability policy is number one.
Personal umbrella policy.
Personal policy is definitely something that you got to have if you don't have it. What else we got?
And I just want to add one more thing on the insurance side. Paul kind of touched on it, and Drew did too, but find someone who knows your business, and then also be sure you're getting a policy that's going to cover those liabilities that Drew's describing. Like you said, you don't want to get the minimum stuff, and you want someone who can understand your business in the context of what policies cover, because insurance companies, they're great, but they really don't want to give you the product they're selling ultimately. So there's that moment where you say, is this a claim? And then they're going to look at it and see if they're forced to cover your claim and defend you. And there are times when they're going to try to get out of that because it might be expensive to defend the claim. So be sure you have somebody that understands that and connects those dots.
Fatty, would you say that you're more or less likely to, all right, let's say you have a client, something bad happens to them, and you're going to go and investigate the person who caused that accident. What are you looking for, first of all? And secondly, are you more likely to go after them if they have a big umbrella liability policy in place? Do you even know about it? Like, what does that look like?
Without a doubt. So when I used to practice, and even some cases I took myself, some cases I would pass off to a guy down the hall that does this all day, every day, and he immediately, first thing he does before he takes your case is look up how much he can collect against this particular person, right? Is it just limits, and what are the limits? And then secondarily, what does this person have to collect against if we're going above those limits? So literally, I don't want to say a good attorney, but a lot of attorneys, some of them good, some of them not, the first thing they're going to do before they even take you as a client is discover what you could potentially win, because that dictates how much they could potentially win.
And how do they find that information, and what can they actually figure out from that?
So Lexis People Search and the information that you can get from Lexis People Search is generally what they do. It's going to go based on a lot of things, but
Is that a paid subscription service?
it's for attorneys only. But yeah.
And so you can plug in Tim Bratz, right, and it'll pull up all the assets that I own that are public record?
It's not that clear cut, it's not that simple, but it gives them at least a picture of, does this person have absolutely nothing anywhere, and all of Lexis People? Probably not going to go after that person. Does this person have mortgages left and right, and auto loans left and right, and does this person have LLCs in their name left and right? Well, we're going to go after that one.
And so it could pull up that person's credit, so it can see what's in your name, right? The beauty of commercial real estate is that none of those loans are actually in my name. If you pull up my credit, it doesn't even show on that I have $200 million of commercial loans out there, right? What about estate, like property that's in some sort of an estate plan or some sort of an LLC? Can it pull up those?
So it's going to pull up any reference to your name. If your name shows up because of something, right? Your name was on it, and then it transferred to a trust that is also you're the trustee of. Mm-hmm. That's going to be a lot easier for them to find than your name was never on it. You bought it in a trust, and the trustees are not in your name either. A lot harder to find.
Okay. So what would you say are the best ways to, shield from that, from not being found, buy properties in the name of a trust immediately?
Start an LLC that you don't have your name on at all through a company that will do it in their name and then transfer it over to you so that you're not on any public records. In a state where the public records don't require your name to be public, do everything through that LLC, through a number of other LLCs that are owned through that LLC, and you'll be in a much better position.
Sounds like
That's not legal advice. That's me as a business person telling you.
we need to find the who
my
to do the how
experience.
on that one. All right. All right. Sorry, Adam. Keep going, bud.
Yeah, the other one we just have on here is just having, your lawyers do the legal work. I know everybody in their various stages of building their business and everything are trying to figure it out. We get calls all the time, and people put together some contracts themselves. There's always that gray area. But ultimately, what you need is a lawyer doing that. And the reason for that is if something does go sideways and there's a contract or there's your offering memorandum or whatever it might be that you should hire a lawyer for, and it turns out somebody in the company did it, you don't have that lawyer to point to. You've not only committed unauthorized practice of law, but also there's no one else to point to if things go sideways. So one of the reasons you hire a lawyer is because that person has malpractice insurance, speaking of insurance, and they're a person who knows what they're doing, obviously, first of all, but also is a person that was responsible for putting the thing together. If it was you, that creates a whole separate issue that you're going to face beyond just the dispute that you're in right there. So hire a lawyer, find one that you like working with, find one that will take your call and you'll take their call, and they're not somebody you don't like working with. So they're out there. Just take the time to build that relationship, get in rooms and meet lots of people, get referrals. But there are lawyers out there that you can enjoy working with, and we're not all that bad, usually. Not all. Yeah. So yeah.
Mark, you have multiple businesses, multiple 8-figure businesses. Lots of assets, lots of property, lots of business stuff going on. And I know you have like specific fiduciaries that give you legal advice and advice on how to do all of this stuff. What do those conversations look like? What are they saying for people that are in the high, 8-figure, 9-figure, 10-figure? That's who they represent. What are they saying? What kind of advice are they providing to you?
Well, I mean, I think everyone's here to learn how to own stuff. I don't own anything. I control everything. And I think once you realize you want to stop owning stuff and just
Explain that.
Well, again, it's like I have houses that I rent from an account that we participate in through trust, revocable and irrevocable. I have my insurance policies in revocable trust as well. They're non-collateral. You can't come after them, like you said. Not only that, Florida is the state, the same as Ohio.
Homestead, yeah.
You can sue me, but you have to sue my wife too. And there's a lot of layers. But at the end of the day, you can sue us for whatever. You're just gonna have a piece of paper at the courthouse saying I owe you money because I don't own anything. So you can't come after us. You can. By the way, lawyers will take all your business. They'll take all your money. They'll be like, we got this bastard. We're taking him down. You can't take anything. I have nothing to take. I'm broke on paper. Mm-hmm. So, when we're having these conversations, by the way, this is a process. This is not something you sit down and solve in one day. Yeah. And by the way, this is something you talk about. I talk to my guys once a month about, especially if you're actually acquiring contracts. I mean, Paul, we've had many, many, many conversations about stuff like, Paul, why'd you do this? You stupid. No, I'm just joking. Why didn't you tell me? But no, I think, in the beginning, it's own, but it really is control. Even my companies, I don't own my companies. My companies own, they're owned in trust now. So it's there's a lot of moving parts, and it starts really becoming a little complex, but you want to simplify it. Mm-hmm. So you have to have a team. I have fiduciaries, we have trust attorneys, we have tax advisors. I mean, all these things have components from S Corp, C Corp, LLC, flow through corps, June ending date, September ending date, December 3rd. There's so many variables. So it depends on how much money you're bouncing around, what your objectives and goals are. I'm pretty dumb on this stuff. So it's I need to hear it 80 times before I actually did it. We've always had umbrella policies. That was always a thing we've done.
What about separating assets, putting some assets in the spouse's name? How does that work? If, I don't know, let's say your spouse owns a bunch of property, or you put some property in a trust that your kids own, can creditors get to those things? What are things that are immune from creditors? You talked about Florida being a homestead exemption, which means If you sue somebody in Florida, you can get their money, but you can't get their house, right?
Yep.
And I think retirement accounts are the same thing. You cannot get retirement accounts, and I don't think you can get insurance either.
Correct.
So those are three things, but not all states are homestead exemption. So, but retirement accounts are, right? They're immune to creditors, and so are insurance.
Yeah, life insurance policies and
insurance
stuff like
policies.
that, yeah. You know, it's a good question. Like I said, I would defer to my lawyers or tax advisors and say, hey, because I mean, we have so many moving parts. It's like, I mean, I'm getting updated visuals of what this looks like now. It's like, hey, here's where we're at. Here's what's going on. You really don't own anything. You know, we're always looking for the holes too. There's always holes, by the way. So and it could be a very small technicality that could open up the policy plans or whatever you have with your lawyers and such. But with the kids stuff, you know, all my kids' stuff is in IRAs. So it's in their retirement accounts. They don't own it, their IRA owns it. With my wife,
And you're doing deals, self-directed deals with specialized IRA.
Specialized
shout
IRA.
out, that you're transacting deals, they're getting little pieces of equity in businesses through your kids' IRAs. So instead of giving them cash,
Yep.
you're just building up their IRA, which then they can access in the future.
yeah, I mean, we have life insurance policies for the kids, not because I want them dead and want their money. It's because, you know, listen, they're healthy right now. When they turn, 27 years old and they want to get married, maybe they have an issue, they can't get a policy. So we're preparing for the future. And not only that, we understand, how to invest these policies, as a bank, use their policies as, the bank for the buying assets. So there's a lot of cool opportunities there too. But I mean, it's endless. That's the problem with this stuff. It's literally endless. And by the way, you can talk to 10 lawyers, 10 tax, you're going to get 10 different answers every single time. So you got to really know what your plans are and then start discovering it through the process.
Yep.
And with every layer that you add, it adds a layer of complexity to get anything done too. So you've got to think about that as well.
Extra bank accounts, right? Extra.
Exactly. More signatures. Your signature block goes from a personal where you just sign to this company, by this company, by this trust, by this person. And it sounds like a pain in the ass, but if you get to a certain dollar amount and you're not doing it, no offense, but it's stupid. You
Well,
gotta do it.
I think the practicality is one of those things I wanted to come full circle on of like, what's practical for people who own 7, 8, maybe 9 figures of real estate or business evaluations to implement right now? Like, what are those things that they have to have, and the things, like, I've talked to trust attorneys about taking offshore accounts and owning things overseas. It's like $30,000 a year to just maintain that, right? And then, I don't even know if you watch Wolf of Wall Street, and you see like what they had to go through, right? And I think about like, would my kids or my wife even be able to access that stuff? And if it's too complex for me, what the hell? I couldn't imagine what it's gonna be like that for them. So it's like, at what point does it become impractical, and what are the practical things that we gotta pay attention to right now? So I want simplicity, boiling it down to a handful of things. So the first thing that I've got is make sure you got an umbrella liability policy on yourself personally. The second thing is the type of accounts that you're funneling money into, right? If you got the cash, it's better to put it into a retirement account like an IRA or self-directed IRA, because guess what? You can access your contributions to that at no cost, at no penalty. So it can still be your emergency fund, right? But it's immune to creditors. Does that make sense? So I'd be funneling money into retirement accounts, and then there's a lot of opinions on life insurance and that kind of stuff. I have a term life insurance policy on me personally, and then I take my money and I roll it into real estate and some other things. Other people have, you have a universal
I have
policy.
whole life, I have
Whole life,
universal.
right.
We have a bunch of, again, it's all layered. There's
Right.
different, I learn whole life. Okay, cool, it's cool. And then you get a little bit wiser, and then you're like, hey, maybe indexed, universal index fund. Like, there's a lot of variables. And none of that, I'm looking at these accounts as I'm very risk adverse in those environments. Because everything else, I'm very risky. Like, I'm in the game to win. So you're gonna have losses in the win, right? It's part of the journey. So with those, it's like I'll have a floor of 1%, a cap at 11%. So if the market goes wild and makes 40%, I only make 11%. But if the market takes a shit, I get 1%. Even though it balances out.
You're not losing
to
principal, at least.
Yeah, like I'm doing it for principal preservation, but also when I turn 60, I can start extracting money at a whole nother level.
Yep.
In the meantime, utilize that cash year 3 or 4 for the tax. You take the cash out and go invest in other assets.
Yeah, where I do believe in the whole life stuff is for the kids, right? Because you can front end load for the kid. The premiums are so cheap, and you can front end load it for 10, 12 years, and then you never have to make another contribution, and it's worth hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars by the.
I mean, there's good 5-year policies.
Yeah, and so and that's something where you can throw some money into, and then they can access it way sooner because they can take loans against it. So that would be the third account that I'd look at if you have young kids. Look at a whole life policy for that. Those are the things that I focus as far as counts go.
Yeah, remember, the money's not all created equal. That's tax-free environment. So
Right.
that's all tax-free money because it's a loan. So the way my kids are, transparency, I pay $30,000 a year for 7 years, and each kid. And then what happens when they turn, there's different stages where by the way, what's cool about insurance, you could do all kinds of modeling. Right? I mean, literally, you can do it until you're blue in the face. It's endless. So it's like, hey, at 25, if they want to start a business, I want them to pull out X amount of money. Hey, at 32, maybe they get married. I want them to have an amazing wedding, pull out X money. Oh, by the time they turn, I think by the time my kids turn 52, they can literally extract $420,000 a year for the rest of their life till they're like 92, I think, tax-free, because we set up the policy, put $210,000 in it.
Yeah.
And their death benefit is massive if they happen to die at 50-something years old. I mean, it's really big.
And at the same time, it doesn't have to be $30,000 a year, right?
No.
My kids have a policy, I think, when I started theirs, it was like $4,700 a year, right? So $400 a month, throw it in there, do that. I think theirs is like 10 or 12 years. And so, it's a fraction of that, but it's still there. So it doesn't have to be big numbers. It could be wherever you want to be on it.
Mm-hmm. Tax-free, but front loaded. The key is we all understand the power of compounding, but yet so many people don't really understand it. Because if you did, you'd be pushing as much money up front, especially with a child. I mean, my kids are 4 and 7, so it's like huge when they get older.
Yeah. And the policy, the premium's so low. It's like, you get a whole life policy, and at my age, you contribute for the first 10 years, and the actual cash value doesn't grow at all, right? Until 9, 10 years in. At their age, it's like 98% of the entire premium goes straight towards actual cash value immediately because their mortality rate is so low. So that just resonates a little bit more with me. But number 1, umbrella liability policy. Number 2, pay attention to the accounts that you're putting your money into. I think another really important one to discuss is like contracts, right? And having the right documentation and paperwork and setting clear expectations on some of that stuff. So don't you have that, I think, on the documentation too?
Yeah, it kind of ties in. Obviously, have professionals that do this for a living. Put your stuff together, because then you get to ask them questions like, "Well, why the hell would I do that?" And then they'll tell you because you don't want this thing to happen. So, first and foremost, kind of overarching. If you guys don't have any of this stuff, don't panic, but just get it started and know that you need to get some stuff rolling here as soon as possible. And yeah, it kind of ties in. Everyone finds an operating agreement or wants to JV or whatever the hell that means. It's important to know that these things are not all created equal. So if you're going to do something like work with, let's say you're taking Tim on as a partner in a 5-year, 10-year deal, these people are going to be part of your life for a very long time. Mm-hmm. So make sure those underlying documents are done in a way that if somebody sucks, you can get rid of them, or if you want to get out, that there's a way for you to get out. So make sure your docs are put together well. And another important part is we're all accumulating all this stuff, right? Like, we'll come this weekend and maybe you'll get a deal next week from a new friend you met here. But where does that stuff go if you were to pass away? If your spouse is like mine, she doesn't want to own some stupid 9-unit in Atlanta, Georgia. So you want to have a plan on where that membership interest goes. And this ties into key person insurance. I hope many of you have at least thought about that, but that's a really important thing. So if I were to pass away, my wife would just like whatever money is actually in that business for her and the children. That's not coming on a regular real estate deal because you can't. These things aren't that liquid, right? You might need 8 more years for this turd to actually be worth something. So you want a insurance company to cut a check so that spouse doesn't have to participate in the deal. And if you want to add anything to key person insurance kind of discussion, but I think that's really important.
So the basic premise behind a key person insurance policy is you put an insurance policy on your percent of interest and
Yes.
what we think that's worth today or in the future or whatever, right?
Yep.
And so if you own 20% of a building and there's $1 million of equity in it, then we think that your share is worth $200,000.
That's right.
We would get you a $200,000 term life policy.
Yep.
That then, or the property would have a $200,000 term life insurance policy that it would pay out of rents and everything else for you. So that way, if anything ever happens to Paul, then his life insurance policy would then pay that property. And then that property would say, hey, here's a check for $200,000 to
That's
your
right.
wife, and we get all that equity. So it's essentially, it gives the partnership
It's just
money to be able to buy out that other partner's interest.
And this is across the board, not just real estate, of course, but like me and Adam, we own a law firm together. If I take a dump, he's going to need some time to float, right? Like the coolest guy in the firm is dead. And yeah. So this goes across for everything, not just real estate, but any sort of kind of partnership where if you go away, things are going to be difficult for a number of reasons. You need a check written, and it's I talk to people all the time. No one has it, and I think this is another thing. When you leave today, just start having those conversations because these things take a lot of time to
Like,
put together.
who's not replaceable in your business or would severely impact your business if something happened to them, right? Like,
Matt Carlin.
hey, Fatty, do I have a term life policy on you? No. And Nick, do I have a term life policy on you? Carlin, do I have a term life policy on you? Yep.
No offense.
No offense to anybody else, but Carlin's irreplaceable. And so I would be in a very tight situation. So I have enough cash that would come in that I can hire somebody badass right away where they would quit their job and come and run point at my company to make sure that I can pay that salary and bring them in and or multiple people really to fill that gap.
I have two questions. So I would bet that almost every single person in this room has an LLC. How many of you know what happens if you own 100% of your LLC or 50%, it doesn't matter. How many of you know what happens to your shares in that LLC if you pass away? How many of you know exactly who it goes to? How many of you know in the document itself who it goes to? And if you don't, that's a problem. Question number two is, how many of you could kick a partner out if they stole from the LLC? And if not, why not? These are two things that you should be talking about with your attorney when you create your operating agreement.
Simple clauses.
And
in
if
the
you're
operating
not, you either need a new attorney or you need to tell them that you want to spend more time with them. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Real quick too, you guys are all here borrowing money, right? Like everyone's here borrowing money. This is a great way to, like, when you're approaching someone to get $1 million, take out term policy on you too, because say if you do die, pay them back immediately. Now your spouse can kind of like have an asset free and clear potentially, and then it protects them, it protects you, and then she doesn't have to be forced to sell. I mean, it could like, and it's so cheap to do. Mm-hmm. Term life policy is very, very cheap. So you got to be thinking of these things that, by the way, they will happen, not could. We're all going to die, unless someone knows something I don't know, but we're all going to die. And we're also haven't even talked about like just basic estate, like what happened to your brother, like not being prepared. Like you never know, we could this building could collapse on all of us and we could be done. So just having just a piece of paper, just something as basic as that. I think that's starting.
What to do if something happens.
Just something basic, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Talk on that.
Yeah.
Bank account getting frozen immediately.
Yeah, for sure. So a simple estate plan that everybody should have there's four things. There's a will, there's a living will. A living will is when I'm really sick in the hospital, I don't want to be on machines. A healthcare power of attorney, that means someone can act on your behalf, look at all your medical records and have access to that and help you make decisions when maybe you can't yourself. And then a financial power of attorney, that's somebody that can go on your behalf while you're still living to a bank, pull out money, move money, cut checks, do things on your behalf. And you need those four things because if you bonk your head, your gunner's working you out and you black out so you're so tired and now you can't talk for a month. You need someone to cut those checks. So those four things are very inexpensive.
It's like $1,000.
Yeah, under $1,000.
Right?
There's, and if you don't have a lawyer, because not everybody wants to call a lawyer, there's great stuff to do online. There's that. If you do something online for $300, that is more than likely way better than not having anything at all. So get those things done. And then from there, there's trust, living trust. Everybody should have one of those, especially if you have minor children. But those 4, you need to get started, because the benefit of doing those simple things is that it's going to open up your eyes to like what else I should be doing. Like, maybe you're talking to a decent lawyer and they're like, hey, how's your, it looks like you got some partnerships. Do you have key person insurance? Do you have, like, where's your membership interest go when you take a dump? So yeah, just getting these early things going, the small stuff. You're not going to be over here like Mark and have stacks and stacks and stacks of varying types of insurance. That stuff takes a lot of time, takes a lot of interactions, takes a lot of relationships, but you need to get started. So.
What's the thing at the bank though you can have? 'Cause
Yeah.
the thing is, you might have money in the bank and you die.
Yeah. So.
You might die, but your spouse is like at the worst time of their life, they have a financial burden now at a whole nother level, because all of us are doing stuff. I mean, you might have, $250,000 a month going out in payments or something,
Absolutely.
but the account is locked down.
So every bank account has a contract that they will give to the account owner for a payable on death designation. So if you own an LLC and it has some money in it, obviously your spouse may not be a member of that LLC, and maybe you don't have the LLC set up. You can make it so the bank, all the spouse has to do is show up with a death certificate, and they will cut you a check for whatever's in that account. So not to like scare, fear, uncertainty, and doubt at everybody, but just having these conversations and starting to think about this stuff when you leave, you will be in a much better place a few weeks from now, just by thinking about it more often.
Yeah, and when you leave, set a date for when you're going to think about this next, because if you don't have it on the calendar, it won't happen. I mean, you put it to the back burner. And the second one I wanted to mention that helps people understand it is if you set up a will, that goes to a probate court and things transfer under the guidance of a probate judge or court. That's a probate transfer. What we've been talking about, what a lot of people are already familiar with if you haven't sat and thought about it because you're not a boring lawyer, there are non-probate transfers. So real estate is a one we're all familiar with. A survivorship deed transfers to the surviving spouse through state law. That's a non-probate transfer when someone dies. Bank accounts, we just mentioned, that's another non-probate. So understanding that, you can have these contractual transfers. Another one is the LLC document, your operating agreement. Does it have transfer on death language in it and who the beneficiary is? So that's another non-probate transfer under contract law or state law. And so it's good to recognize those two distinctions, because it's easy to confuse, well, do I have a will and which one's, when does that trigger? But understanding the non-probate transfers can be a really powerful thing. And really, a will should just be a safety net if some account wasn't set up properly or whatever. You really want to get things set up with non-probate transfers.
So I want to make sure we harp on this, because I don't know if everybody fully understood. A will just means that your spouse, your children, whoever is designated in the will, can go to the probate court and ask them to get that stuff. They have to open up an estate. They have to probably hire an attorney to do everything for them. They have to pay the attorney fees. They have to pay the court to open up the... Oh, and by the way, this is a public record, so now everything that you own is public, so everybody knows what they're getting, who's getting what, all of that stuff. And then after a few months, maybe even a few years, if you don't get into litigation, they can actually pull that stuff out. As opposed to, here's a trust or a transfer on death on a bank account, transfer on death on a piece of real estate, transfer on death in an LLC, transfer on death in a car in Ohio, and all they have to do is show up with a birth certificate. There's no filing of fees, there's no attorneys, there's no public probate. Nobody knows what you had, nobody knows what they're getting. It's done in 5 minutes as opposed to 5 months. Very important distinction.
Umbrella liability policy, understanding where your accounts are. I would say making sure that you have those estate planning documents in place. Those are simple things. As you know, obviously it's not the ideal scenario, but it's way better than even going through the public system and just letting it roll through the probate system also, is having those estate plans in place. And then next level would be having some sort of a trust in place. And a trust costs what, a couple $1,000s? So a couple $1,000. And if anything ever happens to me, the reason I was able to raise my hand is because I know I have a trust that owns everything, all of my interest in anything that I have. And all that money goes into the trust, where instantaneously, and I think there's the 3 or 4 people, maybe 5 people who make decisions collectively as a little board for my trust of where this money goes and how, because I don't want all my properties liquidated, right? Like I don't want it to adversely affect Fatty or Nick or Matt or anybody else on the team, or I don't know if Kate would know what to do with a big lump sum of money like that.
And by the way, if you're sitting there thinking, I don't know if I have enough for a trust yet, transfer on death in an LLC might cost you a couple $100 to an attorney, or if you did it on the front end, it's no additional cost on the operating agreement. Transfer on death at a bank account is absolutely free. Transfer on death with the BMV is absolutely free. Like, these are things that you can do for little to nothing and save your future successors and heirs a ton of headache.
Yeah, that number 5 would be make sure all of your accounts have a transfer on death. Bank accounts, life insurance accounts, retirement accounts, all accounts. Reach out to your financial advisor, your insurance agent, and your banker, and make sure that all of those accounts have some sort of a transfer on death in there.
And if you, by the way, if you had a divorce recently, a new child, a death in the family, change the beneficiaries on those things, because if you don't, you're right back into probate.
How about equity stripping? Having mortgages on properties versus owning things free and clear. Can you speak to that a little bit, Fatty?
Played that game a couple times.
What are your thoughts on it?
I think
So first define it and then talk through it.
There's different ways to do it, but let's start with the basic, right? Tim Bratz buys a piece of property, wants to buy it either completely in cash or put a second lien on it, right? And now somebody goes to sue the property and goes, well, we could sue it, but it's probably worth $1 million, and they have $1.2 million in debt. Why would we bother, right? Again, going back to the Lexis search and the searches that these attorneys do to figure out whether it's even worth filing a lawsuit in the first place. So there's just these.
So attorneys salivate if there's a property owned free and clear or with a ton of equity, right? That makes common sense. But if there's a property that's worth $1 million and you got $900,000 of loan on it, not as interesting, because by the time that they go after you, they pay for all the court fees, they go through the whole process, then they get the property back, then they have to fire sale it, then they have to pay legal fees and attorney's fees and closing costs and brokerage fees and all these other things. They're like, there's not really any money in that property if there is a mortgage on it.
Oh, and by the way, for those of you that have the money to own it free and clear, then you also have the money to create a trust or an LLC that is the lending entity for yourself. So don't put the loan in your own name, make it a real loan, pay the actual interest on that loan, make it a reasonable, viable commercial transaction, and you just saved yourself all of the headache of that attorney. Or in the alternative, there's one person that I know that sells a structure where the interest on the loan actually accumulates and becomes a larger loan over time. I don't know, depending on what state you live in and things like that, I don't know the individual states and how
Like
that
a reverse
works.
mortgage or something?
Yeah, first mortgage that continues to get larger as the interest accrues, but it's in a legal fashion in order for it to actually, no matter what you do, you just set it and forget it. This mortgage gets bigger as the property is worth more because the interest is continuously accruing as opposed to being paid, but still somehow legal and commercially viable.
So did you guys catch kind of the smoke and mirrors that can be created there of like, you can own this LLC that owns this property. You can also own a lending company. Like, hey, I don't want 90% mortgages on my house. Neither do I, right? But you can have a lending company that then has a mortgage, that loans money and has a mortgage on your property entity over here and gives it a loan for $900,000. And you're making payments back to your own mortgage company. Does that make sense?
So you get
it
an
just
interest
creates a little bit of
deduction.
a...
You get an interest deduction here and an interest income here, which washes each other out. But now the entity that has absolutely no liability and nobody can go after them because it's an asset with no liability, with no human error behind it, right? Now that's what really owns the asset because of that mortgage.
So when they look up what do you own, it looks like you have mortgages on all these properties, but it could be a company that you own that has that mortgage on there. Does that make sense? So there's layers upon layers of this stuff, and I think the simplest ones is, again, the umbrella liability policy, making sure you're funding the right accounts that are not touchable, making sure that you have the estate planning documents, the trust documents, the payable on death, and I do want to talk about life insurance in a second, but Paul, what were you
And
gonna
I
say?
was just going to tie in again, insurance wins the day. So like litigation risk and all these, things that we're talking about, if you can get an insurance company to cut that check, it will save you a ton of sleepless nights.